Hi, I'm Danya,
And I'm Shaheen.
and you're listening to or watching
Reality Woo Woo.
It's Not Something to Believe In.
It's something to talk about.
And on today's episode, Shaheen and I are just kind of hanging out on a Friday, and we thought it would be fun to explore what creative partnerships look like in general, and, you know, of course, anecdotally and more specifically, what our creative relationship looks like, and just
How it's
sort
blossomed.
of how it's blossomed through the making of this podcast, and how you can seek out creative partners in your life that complement you and, I don't know, raise you up. Like, I think our relationship is so special. It's something I could like talk ad nauseum about.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think just kind of thinking about that in general, an idea I've been kicking around quite a bit, you know, in my work as like a professional coach, is that you're the creative director of your life, right? And so, you know, we're both creative directors in different senses. But what, you know, with so much agency experience, like thinking about that a little bit more of like, well, no good art gets made without creative constraints, right?
Right. Restraints keep everything together. They give you what you need to move forward.
They give you structure. And so, you know,
a
whether
wise
that
man does not seek freedom. If you seek freedom, you will only find restriction. I don't know where that's from. That's some
Where's
quote
that?
somewhere. I don't
Where
know.
is this
Abe
prophecy
Lincoln.
coming from?
I just made this up. Maybe. Who knows?
I
It's
feel
an
like,
axiom, I believe.
you know, whether it's a client or whether it's a creative partner, like somebody has to come in and help you shape the thing, right? Like I do believe, and you can contradict me if you think otherwise, but I don't know. I feel like you'll agree with me. You know, we channel creative ideas, right? They don't come from us. They come from a collective consciousness, and we're the vehicle for that. However,
Ideas can be anyone's.
they can be anyone's, right? And it's you in that moment. You're either going to act on it or somebody else is going to act on it. But a creative partner helps you to shape it, because the idea is pretty fleeting, right? And to then materialize it, for that thought to become a thing, it takes some molding. It takes some craftsmanship, right?
Yeah, it takes outside perspective too. It takes like a variety of perspectives, diversity of thoughts.
Yeah, to kind of chisel it into what it should be or could be. And as you, I think, get different inputs, it can become a totally different thing than what you initially thought. But that process in and of itself is something that you and I have talked about a lot, is like, and we've mentioned it right on the podcast, is like you and I have instilled to this day, 3.5 years in, I think we've only been in the same room maybe 10 times. Like, it's not.
Yeah, definitely less than 10 times. I mean, yeah, but that's what I think even helped us develop our bond even more, because our friendship was based around communication. So we weren't ever kind of, I don't know, in person, there's ways where you can talk over each other and kind of learn how to communicate in different ways, but we had technology in the way. We had like microphones and like visuals, and we were always facing each other. I'm always facing you, giving you eye contact, which is funny. But
it's that's interesting actually to think about too, is that, so I mean, basically, through, even though we worked at the same company, we didn't really work together ever.
Yeah, on
we found
projects
ways.
together,
We did find ways to work together,
Yeah,
like
we
the
forced
internship
it.
program. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, and, like,
Nonprofit
some pro
work
bono
and
work, yeah.
things that we both cared about. We like forced our overlap. But yeah, in general, we didn't really work together. And
No.
so it's interesting that you said that about always looking at each other, because our connection is very focused. And that's not actually true of all relationships. Most relationships are not this focused. It's just kind of like, relationships can develop in a more meandering way. And ours was always like 6 o'clock on Thursday, we're going to stare at each other for an hour
and talk
like,
about astrology or whatever it is.
or whatever is happening at the time.
Yeah, the consistency was good, but to your point, the focus and a shared focus was the thing that kind of allowed us like a restricted area of room
us the
to be
constraints.
flexible and be creative within it, you know?
Yeah. And through this project, the podcast, we have explored every area of our life truly together. Whether, I mean, a lot of it we record, but not all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's,
I've taken this into so many different routes, and it's actually opened up my conversation style with other people. Like in multiple conversations this week, I was even like, oh yeah, this could be a conversation for a podcast, or like people would like to listen to this person I'm talking to, and they don't even really, they would never do a podcast. But I don't know, the process of building a podcast has taught me so many things and opened my mind to different ways of sharing.
Well, it's to the point of like, and this is so funny, and I think I've maybe mentioned this before too, is that like, you know, circa 2013, when everybody was first listening to like Serial, I was like, why would anyone listen to a podcast? Why would anyone think...
Yeah, I felt the same.
Yeah, why would anyone think that that's... Why would I care what you have to say? And I actually think, right, a decade later, what you said made me think of is like, no, I think it's really gorgeous to elevate all the voices. We all have something to say. We all have that creative force inside of us. We all have a viewpoint and things that we should feel empowered to share with one another. It isn't garbage.
Especially
it's
silly
humanity.
Things, whatever the defense mechanism you say, if it's garbage or silly or whatever, like you want to call it, it's something that you know about and care about. So share it and prioritize it. It's a thing that I didn't even know that I was getting into when you kind of came to me with the idea of doing a podcast. I was in a place where I was like, I'm not going to talk about astrology with people anymore. It's kind of like, it distances me. I don't know about it. But then it became a thing that connected me immediately. And weekly focusing on it allowed other people to become interested in it. And my weirdness became something of value instead of something of isolation.
It's something to hide, right? And I think that's true of everyone, is that we all have different facets of our personality. And that's, and I don't think that's talked about enough, is the way to like healing and self-love and all of these concepts that have become so popular is not through like fixing things. It's about accepting all of the parts of yourself and realizing, the more that I let this weirdo piece of me shine, that attracts other weirdos to me in that respect. You know,
look at RuPaul as a great example of that. RuPaul was like, and every episode of this covers this feeling where everyone's like, I was a weirdo for so long, and now through the show I realized that being myself is the best thing, and they're the winners usually. Now there's a whole multi-million-dollar industry based around this weird idea.
Well, and I think that that's been the rise of social media and like this democratization of media in general, right? Is that, whoa, wait, I can make money being myself?
Yeah.
I think it's a newer concept, right? But I think it's an important one. Yeah. So I think, you know, kind of we're exploring our own relationship, but sort of moving back to kind of a generalization of like, okay, so what is it, right? There are things that we can pull out of our relationship to help you when you're looking for a creative partner. If you're trying to bring an idea to life or whatever it may be, it could be a fucking podcast, it could be a book, it could be, you know, a physical art piece, it could be raising a child, it could be starting a business. It doesn't matter what it is. But in that, so there's, I think, kind of two components. I'm going to separate just in my thinking of like the process of creativity versus like some of the components I think that create a strong bond between you and me. So I think structurally the components are communication is definitely one, and then the complementary skills. So I think those are kind of the two initial pieces there. But let's start with complementary skills, right? So you're a trained designer.
I'm a designer. Yeah. I got the visuals. I got the site down.
You got you studied it too. It's not just like you haphazardly like throw shit together. Is like you also know about the history of art and the history of design in a way that, you know, that's a gap in my knowledge base.
and in a way that I've always tried to just make helpful for us. I don't use this as a way to express myself. I use it as a way to just like use that talent wisely, you know?
Yeah.
And that's what I think has been really nice for this process of working on a podcast, is that I don't have to care too much about all the little nuances and details. I just have to care if it's going to be helpful or good. So that has been a new mindset.
The knowledge that you have, back to being weird and like allowing that to create connections, is like, I'll say something, right, in the creative, I'll be like, here's a thing, and you'll be like, oh, did you know this thing? And you'll like layer onto it with this with knowledge that I don't have, right? Like, and I'll say, oh my God, I didn't know that. And we'll just kind of continue to, you know, I say bat the ball back and forth, but that's what it is volley. Like, we're volleying.
And that's what I feel like, that's what creation is. There was a time when like an ape was like, I can bang this rock on a coconut and I can open it. And then another ape, maybe he thought to himself that I can do that also. But then maybe this other ape decided to communicate with the first ape, and they decided to put the rock on a stick, and now they can break many coconuts all together because they thought to themselves, oh, we'll share this idea and build upon it. I don't know why I took it to ancient society, but that's where
I mean, that's what it is, right? Is like, you're the ape who like picked up the rock and was like, look it's round. And then I was the efficiency ape, and I came in and was like, what if you attach it to this stick though, bro?
Yeah.
Like, what happens here? And that's, you know, I think totally from a podcast perspective, like, I was probably primed to make a podcast my whole life, right? Like, I am a professional writer. I literally coach people on how to look on camera, how to act on camera, how to speak on camera. So I think, that skill set was there. The complementary, like, I can write the captions, I can write the research guides, and you can create all of the visuals. You've learned to edit the video footage of this together.
Yeah, I learned. It was so easy too, it's so easy to, if you know how to design or you know how to use these programs, it's really easy to just force yourself to learn how to cut together
the new
audio clips in a new format, if it's audio or if it's audio and video. And they just make it easier and easier every year. Yeah.
And I'm a conceptual person, right? It's not that we can't do the other thing. And that's something we were talking about, is that through the process of this, I've become a much more visual human being. I understand so much more about, you know, design and what it takes, and vice versa. You and I both as contractors, as consultants, as coaches of what we do. You're a writer. You also do brand strategy. Like, we both cross over in this way where it's.
And you've shown me so many easy ways to not just like how to use comms as a tool better, but also how to like interview and like these kind of like methods of communication, like verbally. All these things that I wouldn't have been taught in school, but it's because I was a designer who cared so much about brand presentation, which makes it easy for me to communicate and talk about ideas, because I had to sell ideas all the time to clients.
You had to sell ideas, and how do you do it? Yes, you're showing them visuals, but you're talking them through it, and so it's this melding
using
together.
Words and
No, I think it's super fascinating. So I think, you know, that's the complementary skill set part of it, is that we have complementary skills that help us. You know, it's not that either of us can't do what the other one does definitely not to the skill level of the other one, for sure. Like, there's no way, but we both grasp and understand. But it's just like, it's so much easier to divide the work this way.
It's impossible to ever step on each other's toes. I'd say
it's true. There's
no toes to step on.
There's a very clear division of labor between us, right? Because we respect one another's craft as well. Okay, the other piece here. Okay, so I said, and then the communication. It's not like we've never gotten, and it's never been full arguments, but it's definitely, there had to be a lot of communication in terms of like, I can be pretty passive aggressive and you're more emotional, and we both reactive. Can read each other's energies very well. So even when there's things being left unsaid, it's being communicated.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And we learned so much through that. Like I would say, when we first started recording a lot of our episodes, I would cut up a lot. I would cut out I wouldn't just cut up like our conversation that trailed off into nothingness, but I would also cut up like really specifically like my ums, or if I giggled at the ends of sentences or whatever. And through that though, I learned how to communicate differently. I think you had stuff too. You caught yourself doing things or saying certain words, and like not wanting to say them anymore. And it wasn't just communicating with each other. It was like how I communicate
refining
outwardly all the time. Yeah.
Refining our own communication. And I think we've also created a container that we trust each other, right? So even where you're like, do you want to talk about this? Where you kind of have pulled it out of me a little bit. Because I do have a hard time asking for help, voicing what I feel. But I feel so comfortable and never judged by you. I'm like, yeah, this is how I feel. I'm not worried that you're like gonna think like, God, Danya's such an uppity bitch. Like I never think that you're gonna think that. And so I'm able to be like, here's what's going on inside of me, even though, it kind of takes a second.
That I think goes back to this idea. I haven't like cemented what this means yet, but when I was saying about like using my art skills with this project for us and not taking all the little nuances too personally or care about it too much, using it wisely and smartly and in a helpful, functional way, that is what kind of allowed us both to be good at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah. Cause I'm certainly very opinionated. I think the other piece that's, so we have complementary skills and our communication is very strong and has only gotten stronger through the process of this creation process, essentially. So yeah, I love that. And I think it's what makes us flourish.
Yeah. And also trusting that like through communicating, you'll learn how to communicate better. Like, I think that we started our episodes about like content about certain zodiac signs. And then we learned that like that didn't communicate well to the audience who maybe they only wanted to click on their sign. So now we're talking about content that's more like for everyone to be interested in.
Yeah.
So that's what I've learned through the complementary skill set and communication path.
Yeah. It's kind of going back to the initial thing is like, you get an idea, and that's one input. And then you start to accumulate other pieces of input. And then, we have literal analytics on like who listens and when they listen and how they listen and what episodes perform well and on varying platforms, right? We're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Like we're on so many different platforms that we understand how people, just how people consume content and what's interesting to them and how and why and whatever. But of course,
it's all learning. It's not like, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, but we're part of that process as well. It's like, we're not going to talk about things we don't want to talk about, just because people are interested in that topic. Right. No.
Yeah. We're trying to prioritize what our voice is and what we want to talk about and learn through that process, not have expectations from it.
Yeah, but it's a shaping, right? Like we're a mirror of what's going on in society, and society is a mirror of what's going on within us. And I think that's so symbiotic and beautiful. And I think it's also, it's another C. Every word I'm going to say in this it's all C's. It's communication, it's complementary skills, but it's courage. Right? To fucking try something that you've never tried before.
We got to like make this into a brand platform somewhere.
It's all C's. Everything I've got is C's for you today. It's courage, right? This is, I was talking to my friend with my friend Como yesterday of like, it's not that, and this gets said, I think people know this, but it bears repeating. It's not that we don't get scared. It's that we do it anyways, even though we're scared.
Terrified even. Just like keep moving your hands.
Keep moving your hands.
Keep moving your voice and speaking up and standing up straight and breathing.
And trust that it's going to take a new shape, and that's everything does. That's the point. You're not trying to stand still and create stability beneath you. That's not real, but we all get kind of trapped in that, especially earth signs.
Absolutely. That's where I've disappointed myself with the expectations a lot. And this idea too of just observing the process and learning through it, allowing if you feel like you don't want to do a show or if I don't want to do a show, we're probably both thinking the same thing on the other end where it's like, sure, whatever. It's not going to be something that like kills me because it's not the one thing in my life. It's just here for creative connection and growth in our own ways.
Yeah,
So.
it's here for our becoming. Yeah.
Yeah, for our becoming.
Yeah, I agree. But that was something same that I had to let go, that I didn't need to have a very specific outcome.
Yeah, me too. In
or
certain
think
ways, I'm sure.
This is a waste of time if it's not doing a very specific expectation. Like, no. This doing, it's the doing that matters.
It's the doing. Yeah.
It's the doing that matters.
And as a meditative, I've said this a million times already on this call, but as a meditative process psychologically for me, it has been just really healing to force myself to say what I want to talk about at least once a week is astrology or whatever the weird thing is. And I'm going to prioritize that voice and not shut him down and not allow him to say like astrology sucks or like, why are we talking about Kim Kardashian or whatever the thing, like this is what is in my soul. Yeah. It's in my soul.
Because it's all life. It's also all life. This is, we're just filtering it all through ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is important. Okay. So I also think, this like melding of the reality and the woo woo is something that you and I are both interested in. And, you know, most people call it art and science, right? But that we've created that within ourselves. We're also very media oriented. Woo woo is a very
vision.
Yeah. Reality is so much more interesting than like science to us, right? Yeah, because we also grew up in the early 2000s and we're like, we understand reality TV, we understand social media, like all of these things
are raised me. I'm always
we're in a simulation. Like reality is such a word that we associate with our lives so much more clearly. Multiple realities, the multiverse, like it's something that we play with a lot and are all becoming so much more aware of. And then woo woo is like, you know, we both live in California. We live in like
I didn't know what woo woo meant before you told
me. Right. Because I live in the woo woo capital of the world. I live in Los Angeles.
Yeah. I know. If I say that to an LA, Los Angelinian, whatever it's called, they're always like, totally. I get what that means.
They know exactly what a woo-woo
I feel like other
girl
people
is.
get it too when I say it. I guess I was just behind.
There's even, it's so funny I keep seeing TikToks of like woo-woo versus woohoo girls. Like the woohoo girls are, you know what that is. That's sorority girl. But a woo-woo, woo-woo versus woohoo
like, what's
girl?
his zodiac sign? Let me find out where his moon is.
Yeah. And, you know, I have experience being both. But yeah, I've been truly a woo-woo girl for a long time. You know, what's funny too is that, and I can't help but bring it up that Mercury moved into Virgo today. That's probably why we're recording like this.
Yes, it is. Yes. During Leo season.
Yeah. Okay. So then a couple other pieces here. So we talked about like the underlying, like the foundational pieces that need to be there in a creative partnership, and then sort of moving more into like what the creative process looks like. So I've sort of outlined it as it's a bit of a wave for me. And the initial starting point is the curiosity, right? So with a creative partner,
wondering.
Yeah, it's the wondering. It's trying to answer a question, and maybe you didn't even know you had that question, but all of a sudden you're inclined to answer it.
Yeah.
And
like, what would Barbie's zodiac sign be? Or what would the Disney princess's zodiac sign be?
Right.
Like, these are just a wonderings.
I'm just like, curiosity. Oh, what
it's
about
a conversation starter.
And believing enough in ourselves to commit time to talk about it, right? Not just like, oh, kind of wondering about it, but wondering about it out loud and in communion with one another.
And being open to like the idea that none of it makes any sense. You're just kind of offering it up as a way to connect with someone else and to learn about the world in creative ways. It's a thought experiment.
And that's important is with the curiosity, with the problem solving, when you're looking for a creative partner. Not only are you you're looking for someone who's interested in asking the same question you are. They don't need to necessarily want to solve or answer the question in the same way that you do. And honestly, hopefully they don't, because what you want to do is to ask questions and each bring a different perspective, a different angle to it.
If you're both approaching it from the same way, then like that's just a one-sided discussion.
That I could just talk straight into my camera on Instagram stories for that.
Yeah.
And I do all day long. But
be a solo influencer if you're going to do that.
Exactly. So yeah, the curiosity needs to be there. You're trying to answer the same question, a similar question, and hopefully not necessarily in the same way, but that's kind of the foundational piece. That's what starts the wave. Then sort of the cresting of the wave is connection, which we've been talking quite a bit about. And so, that can be through either having very similar life experiences, which you and I have talked about. Like, we do have this foundation of like, we're both creative human beings. We're both, people of color who are in predominantly like white industries. We both identify as queer. We both identify as, we just have a lot of similarities. We grew up in suburban households and, went to the city and went to school and like all of these different things. However, I'm the eldest daughter. You're the youngest son. Like we do come from, both of us come from mixed, I don't know what's the proper term of like our parents have been married multiple times. Mixed families, that's what they call it. Integrated families.
Yeah, like multiple married families. I guess.
Whatever it is, like blended.
There's
that's the word. Blended families. That's what it is. The word, yeah. But yeah, we aren't the same person, but we do have similar life experiences that have created a foundation for us to connect. And that's blossomed into more curiosity about each other's experiences, where I give you space to talk about, doing LSD in college with your art friends. And you give me space to talk about like, being in a sorority and working at a PR firm with 50 other women and like what that was like. And those are very different experiences. But that fosters our connection, right? And also vulnerability. Like, I've absolutely broken down in tears on camera with you. Not while we were recording, but just in conversation together.
And allowing the space to do that. I remember actually when we were talking that one time, it was one of those moments where it was easy for me to not take it personally or anything, because we're both working towards the same goals. And at the end of the day, if we're still learning these things about how each other communicates and what we're trying to do, creating space so that it's always fun and not the stressful thing is the only response really to take.
And reminding each other of that, right? Because we're human beings and we forget. We have very porous minds and we constantly forget. It doesn't have to be that serious. We want to be having fun. We want to be in joy. And even with the constraints or whatever it is, like, this is for fun. We're doing this for fun. But when I forget it, you remind me. And when you forget it, I remind you. And that's helpful, right? To have that in a creative partner.
Yeah.
And then
we're so lucky.
We are so lucky. So in terms of the wave, so curiosity, connection, and then you're actually coming down is the actual creation, right? Yeah. Like creation is you pouring yourself into the thing. Like the creation is when I'm like sitting on the couch editing clips so that we can put it on social. It's me writing the captions. It's you editing the fucking episodes and making the covers. Like, that shit's, it's tedious, but we rely on each other to do it,
Yeah. I feel like the word creation feels like expensive creation, but really no, it's down.
It's depleting.
And like
it's the down.
And like, you're pouring.
You're pouring into.
Yeah.
And
it's not where the inspiration starts. It's where it ends.
It's where it ends. It's where it's ending. The wave has crested at connection and you're pouring yourself into it. A lot of people don't get to creation because they think if they pour themselves into something that the tide will never rise again. And that isn't true. But you have to learn to.
It goes back up right after, because once you're done with it, you're allowing yourself and the world to see that thing and also make it better or make new things. And Andy Warhol once said, like something along the lines of, I don't worry about what critics say. I just keep making more art while they worry about whether or not my art's good. Some super ad-libbed thing. Keep making more.
Just keep making. That's what it is.
Let people judge it.
the repetition is what needs to happen. It's hard to stay consistent, but when particularly, you know, again, within creative partnerships, I know that of course we're flexible, and if one of us needs to reschedule and whatever it is, we're accepting and open to that. But you rely on me and I rely on you, and that's how society works. That agreement is what keeps this moving forward, keeps us engaged. It's hard, and we both know this as solopreneurs, people running our own businesses. It is hard to stay engaged and create a schedule for yourself. Like it is difficult to do.
So much easier to do it for other people than for somebody yourself, else. But that's why partnerships are so helpful.
Yeah,
Forces
exactly. Okay. So I thought it would be fun. Obviously, this is a fucking astrology podcast, so we're not going to not talk about woo-woo stuff.
We have to add some woo-woo.
We have to sprinkle the woo in there. I thought it would be fun to talk about 5 iconic creative partnerships over the last, you know, century in different facets, and we'll just start talking about each of them, and then I'll maybe point out a similarity that many of the relationships have. But I'd like to start with John Lennon and Paul McCartney, you know, the most famous of the Beatles, and, you know, creative partners. And I believe they were like schoolboys who knew each other, and it's a whole
long schoolboy friendships.
Yeah. So John Lennon was a Libra, and Paul McCartney is a Cancer. And I think that's interesting, like kind of to dissect that relationship. It's an air sign with a water sign, not like technically compatible, you know, from the astrological standpoint. But I'm sure if we reviewed, and their relationship wasn't seamless. Like I think we've all seen enough like Beatles documentaries to understand that they had a conflict, right? And through that conflict is how they created some of the greatest music of all time.
Did break up.
Yeah. But it's interesting. I don't know that I would have guessed that John Lennon was a Libra, but I guess I
wouldn't have guessed that either.
I would have guessed a Sagittarius probably, because he
seems all like thoughtful and
but it's a little bit emptier than that, right? Now I think about it, I'm like, oh, it was a performance of being thoughtful.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought
Isn't that interesting?
Because Sagittarius is very heavy, deep thoughts, lots of things going on, possibilities endless. Libras are
the aesthetic of being deep. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I wouldn't have thought. And then him with Yoko,
all the people.
Like it does make sense when you think about it. But like the charade was so good that I would have thought he was a Sag.
Yeah. No, I wonder what his other placements were.
Yeah, right. Like I kind of want to analyze their whole charts. But so that relationship, you know, unfortunately ended how it ended. They did break up. John Lennon, you know, was assassinated, and but I think
Paul McCartney is a Cancer, so he was ready to be a star for the rest of his life.
He was ready to be a star and to carry on the legacy for the next, you know, fucking 50 years basically on his own, you know. Then so I also have Serena Williams and Venus Williams, and they are the same. So Serena is a Libra and Venus is a Cancer. And so they're sisters. And did you see the Will Smith movie with them?
No.
Where he plays King Richard, I think is what it's called, where he played their dad.
I'm sure that sounds good.
Yeah, because they grew up in Compton and they went to the public tennis courts, and like I think we all know kind of that piece. But yeah, I'd like to see the blood, fucking sweat and tears that went into them becoming, you know, two of the greatest female athletes, two African American athletes in a sport that obviously is not often played by black women. Yeah.
Wow. No, that sounds good. Good rep.
But think about your sisters, and you're in a very tough sport, a sport where you're not welcomed. How wonderful to have that creative partner, right? To have that partner who really fucking understands precisely, not only grew up in the same home as you, but is in the same industry as you and is facing very similar obstacles as you at every turn.
Yeah, to be a solo kid would have been tough, but to
Yeah.
have
Not to
a
say other
partner
people
in
don't
crime
do
like
it,
that.
but to be the greatest of all time, as Serena
Yeah.
Williams is, I think that container is
You
what
know,
made that
it's really
possible.
interesting to point out too, as Black women, they got to see another Black woman endeavor what each other was doing. So to see a reflection of yourself, they gave each other that kind of representation.
They
It's really
did.
beautiful. I hope. I mean, like, I hope. I don't know their relationship, but
Yeah.
it kind of worked.
I love that, and I think about that all the time, and that's something you and I talk about too, right? Is that
Yeah.
white people just happen to be better. I mean, they subconsciously manifest things because they see versions of the thing that they want all around them all of the time. And I think people of color can sometimes struggle with that, because even if they're trying to search on fucking Pinterest to pin the dream house or the car or the thing, there's not images of them in those places. And so it can be, they can't visualize it as well. So
Right.
I actually,
But nowadays, I mean, if everyone has a Black person on the cover of their website, I say that I see it everywhere, and I'm almost like, I wonder.
Oh yeah, diversity is suffering in the creative
Yeah,
industry.
it's
It's
interesting.
we've gone backwards yet again. But to that point of like, yes, they had each other as the visual, which I think is super
Yeah.
important.
It's so important. I love it. I mean, I
Yeah,
hope that's how it was.
representation matters, and they represented one another within that industry.
Yeah.
Okay, then I have another sports duo, but a male sports duo, Michael Jordan, who is an Aquarius, and Scottie Pippen, who is a Libra. So together they won 6 championships for the Chicago Bulls. They're arguably, I mean, Michael Jordan is the best basketball player of all time, and Scottie Pippen was his number 2, who, you know, helped him win all of those championships, who was able to play second fiddle to the greatest basketball player of all time, because even Michael Jordan couldn't do it on his own. And that's the truth. And I think something we've talked about too is even people who think that they can do it all on their own, you don't create anything on your own.
Yeah, nothing happens on your own. And it's funny, this Aquarius makes me feel like absolutist, and Libra for Scottie Pippen feels like a cardinal sign, number 1. Like their balance must be good. And also, I just want to quickly add to your list, Kobe Bryant as a Virgo and Shaq as a Pisces.
Oh, yeah.
I know. There's like this balance being had.
Obviously, Kobe was a Virgo. I didn't know that, but I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and I don't know, I had a dream about Kobe last week. I feel like that's why this came up.
That's so funny.
But the balance, diversity of thought, different ways of tackling things, size difference.
Oh, and they're the opposite, right? They're each other.
They're opposites.
No,
on it, yeah.
Aries
I
and
think
Libra
Pisces.
are. Sorry, it's Virgo and Pisces, so it would be
Aquarius
Aries and Libra. But
no, it's different for them. But
yeah,
also interesting.
But very interesting. Yeah, because we've also talked about Dwayne Wade and LeBron James before as Capricorn, and what is Dwayne? I think they're both
Scorpio.
Capricorns.
Both Capricorns.
What's Dwayne Wade? Because I know LeBron is a Capricorn.
Dwayne Capricorn. Yes.
He is, right? Yeah, they're both Caps. Okay.
Yeah,
That's interesting. Caps. Yeah, just thinking about these dynamic basketball duos and what their interplay is and what their strengths were. Yeah, I mean, between a Virgo and a Pisces, if we want to talk about Kobe and Shaq for a second, like I said, Kobe, he couldn't be another sign. It's not it's not a surprise to me that Kobe is a Virgo, that LeBron James is a Capricorn, and that Michael Jordan is an Aquarius. Aquariuses are able to completely shut out the rest of the world, which is Michael Jordan. Virgos are able to be so fucking focused on the thing and do the thing. And Capricorns, same thing. Like they have that ability to be so intent on the minuscule pieces of it, right?
The achievement.
The achievement.
Virgos are there to be the best at everything, and they will be the fastest and work the hardest. Capricorns have goals that they will achieve. Similar kind of journeys, but just different focuses of those.
Different, and they're completely different players even. Yeah, right. but then it's interesting to think about their other parts. Is like, yeah, of course Shaq is a Pisces. He's like this beloved, like showman, entrepreneur. He was like releasing rap albums while winning championships. Like
Shazam.
He's a
He was
DJ now.
once.
He's reflective of the culture. He's reflective of what's going on around him. He's kind of like everyone's grandfather is Shaq. Like it's really, that's really interesting to me. And then, okay, let's see. Our next couple is, which I went on a tirade about, F.Scott Fitzgerald, who was a Libra, and Zelda Fitzgerald, who was a Leo, who they tried to take her shine away. Yeah.
Can't take Zelda's shine away.
Can't do it. And
I want to give her old-timey voice.
On paper, should have been a relationship that worked really well, right? Like compatibility wise, we've got an air sign and a fire sign. We've got somebody fanning the flames, but they were reversed, right? Where Zelda was a woman in the 1920s and 30s. And so she wasn't allowed to be the artist, the successful artist. And F. Scott literally pulled passages from her fucking diary and printed them in books and took the acclaim and success for that. And
the worst.
And by all accounts, they weren't in love. I think F. Scott, it's rumored that he was a closeted homosexual and had relationships with Hemingway, and she was a full-blown alcoholic. Like they had their demons that they were both battling. But it does, and we're not the first to talk about or think about this, but like, who gets to be the maker and who gets to be the muse in different parts, in different times in society, right? And that's what that was.
Yeah, there's always like this person would never be anything without this person. Yeah. And who gets the first person role and who gets the second person? Who's the person who gets the stardom? Who's the Michael Jordan? Who's the Serena? But
I think as we're moving into... I think both people can be the maker. We're moving into the Aquarian age. Both people can
I didn't even think of it as us. I wasn't trying to like pin us against each other.
No. I'm not. I'm talking about we have been for the last century in a phase where someone is the maker and someone is the muse, or at least that's how we like to portray that. And I think as we're moving into a more Aquarian age, a collective not revisionist, but we're starting to reevaluate this of like, well, we can both be the maker and we can both be the muse, and we can both back and forth on that quite a bit, right? We can both be inspired and make things and let that be the relationship instead of somebody being Michael Jordan and somebody being Scottie Pippen. But there needs to be flexibility in that. I think we need.
There used to be this bigger focus on like stardom and like individuals being the icon, but now it's more about communities and groups or schools of thought.
So thinking about who those partners are for you is essential to your life. Yeah. Okay, and then I think it's similar. I can't help. I'm still riding this Barbie movie wave of like, our last couple here is Mileva Einstein Merrick, who you don't know that name, but she was Einstein's first wife, and she was a Sagittarius and Einstein was a Pisces. And it's so funny too, because as I was doing the research on this, like it's rumored that of course she helped him. She's also a physicist, helped him with the theory of relativity. But then of course there's men being like, that's unsubstantiated. There's no evidence of that. That's just hearsay. Okay, well of course there's no evidence of that. Yeah.
Still being said.
Yeah. Unfortunately there wasn't an Alexa in their home in the fucking 1930s that recorded all of their conversations for you to have the evidence to substantiate it. But do you think that two physicists shared a bed at night and didn't talk about the cosmos and what was possible? And I don't know.
I didn't even know her name before you brought her up, and now I want to give her a lot of credit.